The dust tasted like ground-up bone. It coated Silas's tongue, settled in the lines around his eyes, and grit his teeth. He'd been following the tracks for 2 days, a grim arithmetic playing out in his head. 1 horse, 2 men, heavy-booted, 1 set of smaller, lighter prints, stumbling, sometimes dragged. They were tracks of violence, and they were fresh. Silas was not a good man. He knew this with the same certainty that he knew the sun would rise and the buzzards would circle. He was a bounty hunter, a tracker of men who had run out of luck and time. The paper in his pocket promised $200 for a man named Abe Jessup, a card sheet who'd shot a marshal in El Paso. But the tracks he was following were not Abe Jessup's. He'd cut their trail by accident, crossing a high barren mesa. He'd found the homestead first, or what was left of it. The cabin was a chimney stack and a field of smoking embers. The 2 bodies in the yard, a man and a woman, had been left for the crows. They'd been dead a day. He'd found the 3rd body, a boy of about 16, by the shattered water trough. But the smaller tracks, the ones that fought, that were dragged, they led east, into the punishing waterless expanse of the Malpais. Silas had stood by his horse, the reins loose in his hand. This was not his business. This was a detour that would drink his water, tire his horse, and put a bullet in his back. He should have turned north, toward the last known sighting of Jessup. He spat the bone dust from his mouth and mounted up, heading east. He found her on the 2nd day. She was huddled in the sliver of shade cast by a crumbling rock spire. So still and sun-scorched, he almost mistook her for another casualty. She was barefoot, her feet a raw, bloody map of her ordeal. Her dress, once a simple prairie calico, was ripped to shreds. He reined in, his horse snorting at the faint smell of dried blood. Silas didn't dismount. He just sat in the saddle, a tall, grim silhouette against the white-hot sky. The girl's head snapped up. Her eyes were wild, consumed by a terror so profound it had burned past screaming. When she saw him, she didn't plead. She didn't cry. She just pressed herself back against the rock, her whole body trembling, a low animal sound catching in her throat. They gone. His voice was a rasp, unused for a day. She just stared, her eyes tracking the revolver holstered on his hip. He sighed, the sound lost in the vast emptiness. He swung down from his horse, his movements slow and deliberate. He unhooked his canteen and tossed it. It landed in the dirt a few feet from her. She flinched at the sound, her eyes darting from the canteen to him. "Drink," he ordered, "or don't. I'm not carrying a corpse." Slowly, like a deer testing a poisoned spring, she crept forward. Her hands, caked in dirt and blood, fumbled with the cap. She drank in raw, desperate gulps, water spilling down her chin and chest. When it was half empty, he took it back. "Who?" he asked. "2," she whispered, her voice cracked and papery. One called Jonas. The other," she choked on the name, "Hale. They hurt you." It was a stupid question. The proof was everywhere. She nodded, a single, convulsive jerk. They killed my PA, my ma, my brother, Tommy. They made me watch." Silas looked away, scanning the horizon. Nothing, just heat, shimmer, and rock. Where they headed? Said something about the border. A cantina. They got tired of dragging me. Said they'd come back after they sold the horses. She was rambling, the words tumbling out. "They took our stock. They took everything. They left you here to die," Silas stated. It wasn't a question. "Jonas," she whispered, her eyes glazing over with the memory. "He wanted to. Hale said it was a waste of time. Said the sun would do it for M." Silas looked at the sun, a merciless white eye in the sky. It was close to noon. She wouldn't have lasted another 3 hours. He turned back to his horse and unstrapped his bedroll. He pulled out a thick, plaid wool blanket. "Cover yourself." He threw it at her. Then he went to his saddlebag and pulled out a strip of jerky and a small, sharp skinning knife. He knelt in front of her. She recoiled, a gasp pulling into her lungs. "Your feet," he said, tapping the knife. "I'm not carrying you." She looked down, as if just noticing the bloody ruins of her feet. He'd seen them when he rode up. The men, Jonas and Hale, had amused themselves. The soles were latticed with shallow cuts, just deep enough to bleed and make every step in agony. Without a word, he grabbed her ankle. She yelped, but his grip was iron. He uncorked the canteen again and poured a stream of precious water over the open wounds, washing away the grit. She hissed, her fingernails digging into her own palms. He tore strips from the hem of her ruined dress, soaked them in the last of the water, and began to bandage her feet. His movements rough but efficient. "Why?" she finally breathed. Her voice was small, a child's voice. Silas didn't look up from his work. He tied the last knot. "Can you ride?" I think so." "Good." He stood, offering no hand to help her up. "Get on the horse." She struggled to her feet, wrapping the heavy blanket around her shoulders, despite the heat. It was a shield. He mounted first, then reached down a hand. She was lighter than a sack of grain. He settled her in front of him and kicked the horse into a slow, steady walk. "My name is Eliza," she whispered into his chest. Silas just grunted and stared east. "Don't matter." They rode for the rest of that day and into the night. He pushed the horse, and himself, to the limit. He knew men like Jonas and Hale. They were scavengers. They'd sell the horses, get drunk, and then one of them, probably Jonas, would get to thinking about the girl he'd left. He'd convince himself she was a loose end, or, more likely, he'd regret the missed opportunity. They would be back. Silas found a small cluster of rocks to make a cold camp. He gave Eliza the last of the jerky and a swallow of water from his second canteen. He sat with his back to the same rock as her, his rifle across his knees. "You, a lawman?" she asked the darkness. "No, a rancher. No." The silence stretched, filled only by the horse's tired breathing and the distant cry of a coyote. "They'll come for me," she said, not to him, but to the night. "Jonas said he'd be back. He said he liked my hair." Silas felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. It was the same feeling he'd had 13 years ago, when he'd ridden back to his own small ranch in Arizona, seen the smoke on the horizon, and found. He shut the memory down. "Get some sleep, girl. I can't. I see them. Every time I close my eyes, I see them." He said nothing. He had no comfort to offer. Words were lies. The only truth in this land was the gun in his hand and the thirst in his throat. "What's your name?" She tried again. "Silas." "Thank you, Silas." "Don't thank me," he growled. "I ain't done nothing yet." He watched the moon trace its pale arc, and he did not sleep. He listened. He listened for the sound of a shod horse on rock. The sun was just a bloody smear in the east when he shook her awake. "Get up," he put her on the horse, and they rode again. The land was changing. The high, rocky desert was giving way to a flatter, more open expanse of dry, cracked earth and skeletal brush. It was bad land, nowhere to hide. By mid-morning, Silas knew they were being followed. It wasn't a sight, but a feeling, a prickle on his neck, a tension in the air. His horse felt it too, its ears twitching, its pace faltering. He reined in, scanning their back trail. For a long minute, there was nothing, just the vast, silent emptiness. And then, a puff of dust, tiny, distant, but unmistakable. "Damn," Silas hissed. Eliza had seen it too. Her hand gripped his arm, her nails biting into his sleeve. "It's them. It's him. Just one," Silas said, calculating. "They split up, or he's coming back alone." Jonas, he thought, the one who'd liked her hair. "What do we do? Can we outrun him?" Silas looked at his horse. The animal was spent. It had carried 2 riders for a day and a half, with little water. "No, he's on a fresh mount. Then we hide." "Where?" Silas gestured to the barren land. "He'll ride us down by noon." Eliza began to tremble, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "No, no, no, please. Don't let him take me. Please. I'd rather you." She looked at his revolver. The cold knot in Silas's stomach turned to ice. He'd seen that look before. "Get down," he said, his voice flat and hard. He swung off the horse and pulled her down with him. He looked around, desperate. There was nothing, no cover, just a flat, dead expanse. And then he saw it, 100 yards off, a single, dead tree, its trunk thick, and beside it, a long fallen log. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. "There, go." He slapped the horse's rump, sending it trotting a short distance away. "Kneel behind that log. Stay down. What are you going to do? Just go," he roared. She scrambled, her bandaged feet stumbling on the cracked earth, and huddled behind the log, pulling the blanket tight around her. She looked impossibly small, a bundle of plaid wool and terror in a wasteland. Silas walked to the other end of the log. He didn't hide. He sat down on it, his back to her, and faced the coming rider. He pulled the heavy Colt from his holster. This was the moment. The dust cloud was closer now, a proper plume. The rider was still just a dark speck at its heart. Silas's hands were steady as he broke open the revolver, checking the load. The cylinder was full, 6 rounds. He snapped it shut, the click-clack of the metal echoing in the profound silence. Behind him, he could hear Eliza's breathing. It was sharp, ragged, a hook tearing at the air. He looked down at the gun in his hands, turning it over. It was a tool, nothing more, but in this world, it was the only god that answered. He laid a few spare cartridges from his belt on the log beside him, lining them up like soldiers. "He's getting closer," Eliza whispered. Her voice was thin with panic. "I see him," Silas said, not turning. He'll kill you. Maybe. Why are you stopping? Why aren't we running?" "'Cause I'm tired of running," Silas said, the words coming from somewhere deep and 13 years old. "And I'm tired of men like him." He could make out the rider now, a big man on a bay horse. He wore a dark shirt. He was coming straight at them, like a bullet. He hadn't slowed. He knew they were there. He'd seen the horse. Eliza made a small, choking sound. "It's him. It's Jonas." Silas didn't reply. He just sat on the log, the gun resting on his thigh, and waited. The sun beat down on his hat. A drop of sweat traced a line through the dust on his cheek. He's close now. 50 yards. He was slowing his horse, a grin splitting his sun-blistered face. He had a rifle in his scabbard, but his hand was on his sidearm. He was arrogant. He saw an unarmed girl and a man with his back to her. "Well, well," Jonas called out, his voice oily. "Look what I found. Got yourself a new man already, have you, girl? He won't last long." Silas didn't move. He kept his head down, his gaze fixed on the revolver in his lap. "I'll take the horse, friend," Jonas said, stopping 20 yards out. "And the girl. You can walk, or you can die here. Your choice, here, your choice." Behind him, Silas heard Eliza's sob, a raw, hopeless sound. "Please," Eliza begged, her voice breaking. "Please don't let him get me. I beg you. It hurts so bad. What he did." Silas froze. Her words, her terror, they were a key in a lock he'd kept rusted shut. He saw a different face. His wife Sarah, her eyes wide with that same, final plea. "I beg you, ... He'd been too late then. He'd been 2 hours too late, off chasing a stray calf while the world burned. The rider was close now, 50 yards. He was slowing his horse, a grin splitting his sun-blistered face. He had a rifle in his scabbard, but his hand was on his sidearm. He was arrogant. He saw an unarmed girl and a man with his back to her. Well, Jonas called out, his voice oily. Look what I found. Got yourself a new man already, have you, girl? He won't last long. Silas didn't move. He kept his head down, his gaze fixed on the revolver in his lap. I'll take the horse, friend, Jonas said, stopping 20 yards out. And the girl? You can walk, or you can die here. Your choice. Behind him, Silas heard Eliza's sob, a raw, hopeless sound. Please, Eliza begged, her voice breaking. Please don't let him get me. I beg you. It hurts so bad. What he did. Silas froze. Her words, her terror, they were a key in a lock he'd kept rusted shut. He saw a different face. His wife Sarah, her eyes wide with that same, final plea. I beg you. ... He'd been too late then. He'd been 2 hours too late, off chasing a stray calf while the world burned. Silas's hand tightened on the grip. He could feel the etched wood biting into his palm. He thought of the smoking ruins of the homestead. He thought of the boy by the water trough. He thought of his Sarah. He said, his voice soft, almost conversational. It'll be quick. What's that? Jonas squinted, his hand lifting from his holster. Silas moved. It wasn't a fast draw. It was a single, fluid motion. He didn't stand. He simply raised the Colt, swiveled at the hip, and fired. The shot was a deafening crack in the silence. Jonas's arrogant grin vanished, replaced by a look of profound surprise. He clutched his chest, a dark stain blossoming on his shirt. He tried to pull his own gun, but his fingers were numb. He toppled sideways from the saddle, hitting the ground in a heavy, lifeless thump. The bay horse shied, then bolted, galloping off into the wasteland. Silence fell. It was absolute. The ringing in Silas's ears faded, replaced by the sound of the wind. He sat there for a long moment, the gun still pointed at the body. He let out a breath he'd been holding for 13 years. Behind him, the ragged breathing had stopped. There was only quiet. Slowly, Silas stood. He ejected the spent shell and replaced it with one of the cartridges from the log. He holstered the weapon. He turned around. Eliza was exactly as he'd left her, kneeling in the dirt, wrapped in the blanket. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the dead man. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. He walked over to her and stood looking down. Get up, girl, he said, his voice the same gravelly rasp as always. She looked at him, her gaze slowly focusing, as if seeing him for the first time. The terror was still there, but it was overlaid with something else. A fragile, stunned awe. Is he? He's dead, Silas said. There was another one. Hey, he went for the border, she whispered. He won't be back. Good. Silas walked over to the dead man and knelt. He searched his pockets, finding a half-empty pouch of tobacco, a few coins, and a folded piece of paper. Silas glanced at it. It was a wanted poster. For him, Silas Crum, wanted for the murder of 3 men in the Arizona Territory. The men who had killed his family. He crumpled it in his fist and stood up. Eliza had risen to her feet, the blanket clutched around her. What now? Silas looked west, where the bay horse was now a distant speck. Now we walk. Fortitudes, 2 days, if we're lucky. We'll find your horse. He started walking, not looking back to see if she was following. He heard her footsteps, stumbling but steady, falling in behind him. They walked for an hour before she spoke. Why? She asked, her voice stronger. You could have kept riding. You could have given me to him. Silas stopped and looked out at the endless, unforgiving horizon. The sun was high, but it didn't feel as hot. I owed a debt, he said. To me. No, he started walking again. To me, she caught up, walking beside him, no longer trailing. The blanket was still around her, but her head was up. The dust was still in the air, but for the first time in days, it didn't taste like bone. It just tasted like the road ahead.